Hi, my name is Ellie Gettinger. I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and I am delighted to share with you a story of Mah Jongg as we close out this 2021. So when we're thinking about our calendar for museum moments, we always want our kind of end of the year moments to be a little bit more uplifting, a little bit more fun. And what could be more fun than this game? And really, its origin story is fascinating. And the fact that it's played, predominantly by Jewish women is also just an incredibly interesting part of this. In fact, there are two types of games. There's Mah Jongg that is played in China that is, and there are even more variations than that. And then there's the American style, which has its own set of variations. And today we'll kind of explore that evolution. This became something that we learned a lot about when several years ago, we had an exhibit that we brought in from the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York called Project Mah Jongg. And it was an exhibit that really explored the history and the cultural impact. And you can see these fabulous display cases that were built to look like Mah Jongg tiles. And it was such a fun exhibit and such a fun summer that we had exploring this exhibit through just huge, diverse communities of people who came in who really loved the game. And so throughout the summer, we had people who came in and played. We had a Mah Jongg tournament day. It was crazy. There were like 90 women playing Mah Jongg, and it was silent while they were playing. It was unprecedented. And this was just such a fun exploration. And it really brought lots of people into the museum that hadn't been here, or just that they were starting to think about and reflect on this game that they love in a totally new and different way. One of the things that we did for this exhibit is that we asked people to share their pictures with us. And so you can see all sorts of different groups played Mah Jongg and in all sorts of different spaces and places. I think one of these might be at Lake Geneva. I think, there are different people with different sets of the longevity of a game, whether they're always playing with the same people or whether they're switching off and they have differently competitive games. And you can see here the basic setup where you have tiles and a rack. And then the thing that we'll talk about a lot at the bottom is the scorecard, which is an incredibly important part of the American game. So Mah Jongg was popularized by the gentleman on the left there. His name is Joseph Babcock. And he was one of several Americans who were part of this movement. He brings the game back. He had been an executive for Standard Oil in China and had learned to play this game, and then brings the game back with him and realizes people like it because they think it's kind of exotic. There's a lot of strategy. And he creates, Babcock's rules, and he starts importing sets. And then there's another set of American gentlemen who also start exporting. And at some point, Parker Brothers actually starts making sets as well. It becomes pretty popular pretty fast. I would say in the 1920s, it's a big fad. And here you can see Babcock teaching Joseph Fairbanks how to play Mah Jongg, that he's got the guide right in front of him as he goes. In the 1930s, there's a decline in the popularity of Mah Jongg, but there also is a kind of sense of purpose that comes over at the same time. And you see, this is one of my favorite pictures that was from our exhibit. This is a picture from Florida and from the 1920s. You can see these women have taken their table out and they have put it up on life preservers, and they're using it to play Mah Jongg in the water. I feel like tiles must have been falling in the water left and right, but they seem to be having a good time. Although they might be looking a little defensively like, yeah, what are you saying here about our tiles falling in the water? So in the 1930s, a group of women are convened in New York. And basically, it's this group of women that say, we want to make a unified standard set of scoring. But to that time, different games had different scores, different ways to win, different practices. And so this group of women, led by a woman named Mrs. Violet Cecil, and a number of other, Barbara Meyerson, I believe, is one of the other kind of early initiators of this. come together in the Essex House in New York. They expected 250, I believe over 400 people show up at this first meeting of what becomes the National Mah Jongg League. And the things that the National Mah Jongg League then do over the next, since 1937 when they started, is they standardize play. They introduce some variations in the American game, things like jokers, and some of the characters are a little bit different in the American game. And then they also introduce the card. So every year a new card is produced, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I want to talk about the lady here on the far right. Her name is Ruth Unger, and she was the longtime head of the National Mah Jongg League. For more than 50 years, she ran the National Mah Jongg League and grew it. Her sons took over after she died. And one of the things that they do is, they're selling this card every year, and they support all sorts of nonprofits and charities throughout the United States and Israel. So it is this kind of, and it's interesting, they don't have a social media presence. They don't have, their website is pretty limited. And so everything they do is really person to person. One thing that I think is kind of interesting about Barbara Meyerson and Violet Cecil, these upper class ladies who started the National Mah Jongg League, is that they started with a group of 400 in 1937. By 1940, over 40,000 people were members of the National Mah Jongg League. If that's not like a viral success, I don't know what is. And I think today there are over 500,000 people who are part of the National Mah Jongg League. It's really an impressive kind of grassroots organizing on one hand, and then this other hand of the power of just that connection between a game, like what that connection can mean for people. So let's talk about this card. Every year, the National Mah Jongg League produces a new card. This is the 2013 card, and it has, this is the winning hands, and you can win if you get any one of these hands. And some of them are more complicated than others. And there's also a point value for betting that comes into play as well. But each year, there's some hands that are always appearing, but there's also variations that appear as well. And it's one of these really interesting things. How this works is you have a group of volunteers who are part of the National Mah Jongg League who come together every year, basically right after the new card is released. And they start testing it out and playing the game and figuring out what are new variations and what are ways in which they want to have the winning card. What are some new things that they want to play up in this next year? And they test it, and they test the card and these variations for about 6 months, and then they put it into production. And then after that, the card comes out, and for the period after that card comes out, they are spending a lot of time answering questions. So if you go into the National Mah Jongg League, you often find that there are women who are on the phones answering questions, who are part of this group to talk about, okay, this is what a winning hand looks like. And if you look at their website, they actually have a frequently asked questions, which really does break down winning hands and what you can do and what you can't. And I just love this story for all of the ways in which people can connect and organize, and that each year that there are all of these people who are incredibly good at this game, but they have to continue to challenge themselves. It's, it's not enough to be great at the 2013 game. The next year, you're going to have to figure out a whole new set of strategies for the 2014 game or the 2021 game. So it's just so interesting to see how people have been part of these long-term games, and then also how they can continue to stay together. I'm sure you guys have your own Mah Jongg memories. Please share those with us in the chat. This is my last museum moment, so I have been delighted to share with you. Thank you so much to our supporter, Robin Cohen. It has been a pleasure to be able to share with you. You can learn more about Jewish Museum Milwaukee, including the making of the Mah Jongg card, at our website, jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. Or you can visit us live and in person. We are open 6 days a week, Sunday to Friday. And right now, Scrapyard Innovators of Recycling is on display. Thanks so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure.